enjoy this program about my favorite topic, tropical fish. Video cassettes of this program are available for $14.95 each by writing to Video Sig, 1030 East Duane Avenue, Suite C, Sunnyvale, California, 94086, or call 1-800-245-6717. In California, call 1-800-222-2996.
Look at the pretty blue ones.
Hey, Mom, the fish has babies.
Paul, what's this new fish?
Well, look at the extensive development of the barbels, the whiskers there. It's obviously a pimmolated cat of some kind.
Mardell Laboratories and Aquarian Food are proud to present Help with the Home Aquarium from Paul Speece, the Aquatic Maestro.
Well, how do you like your fish? You like them a foot long, like this red devil you're watching? Very prominently developed nuchal hump there on that male. See that fat forehead? This guy's the boss of the tank, by the way. When he comes around, everybody gets out of the way, or else he gives him a little shot. Not unusual for a big cichlid, but he's not big for the fish in this tank, but he is the boss. Now you can see three fish in here that are in the 2-foot range. The old Pangasius there, the grass cutter, as some of the hobbyists call him, iridescent shark. This guy's half grown now. Well, see, there's somebody establishing themselves. You can see a lot of activity in this tank because there's about a half a dozen cichlids, and they all like to say, hey, I'm the boss. So they're spread out, and they can do that. They can spread out nicely in this aquarium. We're in the home of Ann and Scott Middleman in Brimfield, Ohio, and they have a collection of very large fish. There's 12 fish in this aquarium, and it's 350 gallons. Now you can have a small aquarium, small community tank, a nice collection of small fish. Or you can have an aquarium like this, or any place in between. It just happens that Scott likes to keep these monsters, and monsters they are. You can see the guy with the beak there, the long pointed snout. That's a garpike, and a prehistoric fish, different than other fish in many ways. But the one thing that has happened to this poor guy is that the aquarium is 2 feet wide, and this guy now is over 2 feet long. So he's got to, do a little bobbing and weaving to turn around in here. But at least it says Scott's feeding him right because he has grown. The other big guy in here is very supple, the arowana, a South American fish, and has a mouth on it like one of those landing craft that you remember maybe from World War II. When that sucker opens up, everything goes in. But he can fold right in half, see? And nice name, too, Osteoglossid bicerosum. This is bony tongue, but the bicerosum says 2 hairs, 2 whiskers, and it talks about that unusual formation on his lip. Cichlids, oh, have we got them in here? We've got, we've got Jack Dempsey up front, the Severum, the pike cichlid, the Oscar. Boy, all kinds of them, and very prominent, one of the wolffish, the gobies, sleeper gobies, very treacherous, big mouth, a nice fish. Exciting aquarium here, but as you can see, very large fish in here. That means lots of live food and lots of room. Well, as you can tell by the background music that we're hearing, and let's face it, ain't a music. If you're an aquarist, if you're a hobbyist, that's music. You can tell we're back at White's Fish Farm. And the name of the game today is Gouramis. That's at least the focus I've taken. I want to really look at the evolution of unusual forms and what brings it about. But as I say, primary look at Gouramis because they offer us some of the most beautiful fish and some of the most common. And as we'll see, some that are a little different than others. Gouramis, Asia, Africa, In Asia, we get the ones that we normally associate with that name gourami. Whether it's the small ones, the dwarf gouramis, the bigger ones like the snakeskin or the blues or opalines. That's where the gourami name comes into play in the Asian ones. So let's get the African cousins out of the way right away. It provides us with a couple of genera. One is the Ctenopomas. Now that's spelled C-T-E-N, Ctenopoma, and you don't try to say the C. The reason I bring that up at this point is I'm going to talk a little bit about scientific names, and we might as well start doing this right. Ctenopomas are known as bushfish, and again, native to Africa. South Africa gives us another genus, Sandelia. Rarely see them, forget them. But over in Asia, we get the great mix of the common gouramis. Now let's take a look at the genus of a very common group of gouramis, Trichogaster. Now you say, wow, what a name. Tricho means hair-like. Gaster, as in he has gastritis, stomach. Gastritis, it says there's a hair on the belly. Now I guarantee you, if you had discovered this fish out in the woods someplace and come back to talk about it, you would say, I saw a fish with these hair-like things on the belly. That's exactly what the guy who discovered this did. But he did it by the rules, and it happens to come out in Latin or Greek as the rules go. So that's what we're talking about, and he has to give it two names. One is a genus, which is a collection of similar fish. The other is the species, which is exactly, specifically, only this one fish. So in a sense, the genus would be like hound, and the species would be like saying beetle. Beagle. Not beetle, beagle. So that we have that specific animal. These fish are also called Antibanthidae, as that is the great family that includes them all. They're called labyrinth fish. They're called bubble nest builders. And all of this goes together because this labyrinth fish, the name comes from a sponge-like construction in the head, which allows these fish to go to the surface, gulp air, and they can hold it in there and extract the oxygen. Now this is a pretty neat device to have if the water you're living in is low in oxygen and you can't really get enough using the gills. Now there's a real neat mixture of gouramis of various types in this aquarium in front of me. And they represent a lot of the ones that we would see going into the pet shop to look for something in the gourami family. The one group are the paradise fish, and they're mildly aggressive, sort of like a betta, if you will. But still, you can put them in with the mix of gouramis and fish of that size if you feed them right. Trichogaster is one of the large genera, and that includes a lot of these common ones, the blue gourami, the opaline gourami, the pearl gourami, the gold gourami. These are all sports that were evolved, not the pearl, but these are all sports that were evolved from that old three-spot or blue gourami. Now in the case of the pearl gourami, Trichogaster lyrae, we find a real reason for these scientific names which you may think of as just a problem. Okay? And it comes about this way. Depending on where I speak around the country, people refer to this pearl gourami as the lace gourami, the pretty gourami, the mosaic gourami. So if I get on the phone with somebody on the West Coast, I better tell them Trichogaster lyrae. Then we both know what we're talking about. We would suspect also that these fish that spend so much time gulping up at the surface to get air might evolve a breeding mechanism that takes advantage of their presence at the surface, and we'll see as we go on that that is indeed the case. The story of the bubble nest breeders. Well, we're back in my basement, my old basement with its low ceiling and its confines. And the cameraman's got his legs tied in a knot, and the producer's screaming, hey, I didn't make this for TV production. I made it for a fish room. and it's been here for a while. You can see this aquarium right behind me, stainless steel tank. It's probably older than half of you people watching this, but it serves the purpose. And at one time or another, I've called that my angelfish tank, and there's still 4 beautiful marble veils in there left from raising angels. I used to call it my plant tank, and right now there's probably 100 sword plants on a number of runners when I was doing a plant experiment. Now I think of it as my gourami tank, because I got about a dozen pearl gouramis in there left from a nice adventure. And we're going to talk about those kind of gouramis, the bubble nest builders, and in particular, an easy one to start with, the Trichogaster genus. Now, when we get into that collection, we're going to hear common names like this, like the blue gourami, the opaline gourami, the gold gourami, other color phases, amethyst, different names like that. Those are all one kind of a hybrid that's been evolved. We're talking about the pearl gourami, the snakeskin gourami, the moonlight gourami. These are the larger gouramis for the most part, but fairly easy to breed. And you say, well, tell us how to breed them. Fine. Now, I know you've about had it to hear with hearing about take care of the water, but that is one important part of it, as well as the diet. So I mention that again, because if you do that, if you simply provide them with those 2 simple things, they'll breed for you. They're doing it in here in a cover of duckweed, in all those roots in the far end of the aquarium. They love it in there. You see that plant hanging out of the aquarium? There's a message there, because as the aquarium ages, the one reason that I keep bringing up water changes is the accumulation of nitrates. Plants love it. That's a common household hanging plant, the pothos. I got leaves this big growing with just roots in the tank. Nitrates are bad for fish. They're good for plants. Change some water. At any rate, you got the idea now, right? We got duckweed on the top. Why? Remember, these are bubble nest builders. And anything we can do to encourage, to help the formation of that bubble nest goes a long way towards success. Now, where do the bubbles come from? You just watch these guys behave and you'll see immediately. They go up and gulp air, pass it through the gill mechanism, and when it comes out, it's mixed with mucus and it becomes a very stiff, a very good bubble. And as they continue to do that, finally this nest accumulates, and it'll be that big around and stick that far out of the water. And it's that nest that contains the eggs after they're expelled during that nuptial embrace, if you will. They're expelled, fertilized, caught, and popped up into that nest. And that really is all there is to it. Well, maybe I've oversimplified it, but I tell you, these fish are worth pursuing if you want to try to spawn one of the gouramis. They really are neat fish. Now, a couple of other things you want to think about. When you get the babies, and you'll get them, and a blue gourami that long, for instance, is going to pop 300 or 500 babies, you got to be ready to feed them. An old aquarium like that, rich in algae and growth, is a nice place for it, because once they absorb that egg sac that's part of their belly when they're coming out of the egg, once that's gone, then they're ready to eat constantly. You got to feed them if you want to raise them. And you want to cover the aquarium, either with duckweed or with something over the aquarium real tight, because in about the 4th or 5th week, when that labyrinth from the air-breathing device is forming in the baby's heads, they're very susceptible to barometric changes. Gouramis, these guys are really nice, really easy to breed. I encourage you to try them. Now I want to continue with this collection of fish, the gouramis, to give them their common collectible name. These gouramis have evolved this unusual fins in the front here, hair-like fins. Some of them get their name from it, the Trichogaster. These fins are covered with special cells called tumbler cells, and they are dynamite when it comes to tasting things. So they serve a great purpose, shows the remarkable differences in evolutionary forms. And along with that, lo and behold, we have this apparatus, this sponge-like labyrinth in the head that allows them to literally breathe surface air if the waters are depleted. And again, that's just part of getting by in those warm waters. So now you think with a fish that has come this far with fins alike and heads alike, maybe they would breed alike. Au contraire, Emily. They breed any way they want, it seems. We do have bubble nest builders. And I guess we could suspect that having lived at the top as much as they do, that their breeding would indeed involve, slash, hyphen, however you like it, this technique of building a bubble nest by blowing bubbles out of their mouth, taking air into their mouth, blowing it out of their gills. But the common betta, the fighting fish, the Siamese fighting fish in front of me here, is a bubble nest builder. Regardless of the type, though, we're going to find out that hobbyists all over the country keep gouramis. Here's a popular one, the old kissing gourami in its pink and green form. Popular because of those big rubbery lips, and they do kiss. Although I associate their osculation with brushing their teeth more because I see it after eating. Nice fish, though. Gets a little large, 10 inches, 12 inches in the aquarium if they're fed right. They must eat 6-7 times a day to grow them to that size. They process a lot of food. We have the old Spherychthes. Neat name, huh? This is the chocolate gourami. Scientific name is Spherychthes. You can almost hear it in there. Ballfish. Ichthyes is a fish, of course. Great name for it. This one's a little delicate. Don't play with this one till you've been at it for a while. Next, the Osphronemus, to track by smelling. You see, these names are meaningful. This guy is something else. We're going to see him very shortly. Let's take a look at the African bushfish, the African labyrinths, before we take a hike out front. These bushfish have a number of popular forms, and somebody discovered one of them, and they said, oh, look at this. Look how pointed the nose is. How do you say pointy nose? You say acute, that's sharp, the acuta rostra, the rostra, pointy nose. When you know it, some guy comes along shortly after and discovers one with a nose that's even pointier. Oh, trouble. What are we going to name him? The name is gone. Au contraire, we're going to name him, same thing, different way. Oxyrhynchus. Says the same thing. These scientific names are truly meaningful. They serve a purpose. And in that respect, they're very important. Let's take a hike now out to the front end in Jim White's waiting room. We'll see a little something that's, I tell you, going to knock your socks off. Well, I guess you would have to agree that our friend here is not your average gourami. Although his name is, this is Osphronemus gourami. Comes from Asia. This guy goes 10 or 12 pounds. They grow to 20 pounds. He and I are trying to figure out right now who's really going to run this show, see? But he wins. A big fish. And associated problems with a big fish. But the nice thing about a fish like this size, look at the scales. How well defined they are. Look at the lateral line. You can see that arcing through the body. A mixture of fish in with them, and you notice when they come by time to time, they're really small compared to him. See that clown loach down at the bottom of the picture? That guy's 18 years old. Jim White knows this. He had 4 of them at one time, but look at the life on that guy, and he's still lively. So, and down in the corner here, a unusual placard, really a neat tank. And if you're going to feed these guys, then you feed them, you feed the fish. So the first guy I'm going to take care of is old Rubber Lips here, and he likes a lot of greens, and I'm going to give him some. Here you are, buddy. You don't get my fingers, though. You just get the greens, see? So he eats his lettuce, and once I've done that and got him a little happy, then I can put some of this stuff in here like this, and now we'll see all the guys come to eat. Okay, a lot of it floating, a lot of it drifting. The guys at the top will get what they want, the guys in the middle will get what they want, and the catfish will clean up the rest. You know, having looked at these gouramis, these guys with the breathing apparatus in their head, with the pectorals that have such powerful taste cells in them, you'd say, ooh,
really a unique animal in the world. Not really. If the water is bad enough in terms of dissolved oxygen, the critter that's going to live there has evolved to take advantage of that, to overcome it, or they don't live there. That's simple. What kind of critters? Bizarre ones? No, catfish. Little ordinary catfish are some of them. The Coriodoris that we keep in our aquariums, those are some of them. You see that up to the top business where they're going to gulp air. How do they get rid of it? Not in the head. They swallow it and extract the oxygen in their intestines. Pretty neat. The hoplos, the calichthes, these armored catfish, they do the same. And wouldn't you know, in the process of spending that time at the top gulping, other activities come together. And when these guys build a bubble nest, I mean, baby, they build a bubble nest. It pokes clear up out of the aquarium. What else? Snakeheads. You don't like that name, huh, Mrs. Johnson? Well, that's the way it goes. But I'll tell you, whoever named it saw some recognition in there, because the scientific name of one of the snakeheads is Ophiocephalus. And that says exactly snake head. They have a suprabranchial breathing accessory organ. That's all it is. And the lungfish, well, we know about them. They estivate, they bury in the mud. In short, if you can get out of the water and keep your breathing apparatus, the gills, wet, you can make it. Let's assume now that you're doing your homework and you've managed things properly and you've created an environment in your aquarium that is literally stress-free. Perfect. You're going to get some beautiful colors, amazing response, proper activity out of these fish. Like this tank behind me. We saw these pearl gouramis, and they're delightful fish. The other dominant fish in there that catches your eye immediately, I've got 4 or 5 big marble bale angels. And these particular fish get along very well together. Unfortunately, they're sort of sedate, laid back, relaxed. They don't move around a whole lot. So if you want to change that kind of a scenario, if you've happened to create that by mixing these slower moving fish, then you put in some Danios. And they're sort of like boys at recess in springtime, they're full of vinegar. And they are constantly on the move, maybe a half a dozen of them zipping back and forth. That'll really pep up an aquarium. Those Australian rainbows and all the other rainbows from that part of the world, they're beautiful fish. It's a delight to introduce you to an old friend of mine, Klaus. Thank you for having us to your laboratories. Klaus Woltman, and we're looking at a collection of fish that he has in here. Now, I see a pretty big flying fox in there, Klaus, which is out of...
Well, yeah,
where did he come
it really
from?
doesn't belong in there. I had him in another tank where he fought too much with another fish. So I put him in here with the rainbow fish. He doesn't do much harm here.
Just to separate them, huh? Yeah. So you call them rainbow fish, and that's a pretty good blanket name for this collection.
Well, they are pretty colorful fish. And,
oh, yeah. Beautiful. We're talking, what, New Guinea,
yeah.
Australia, that part of the world?
All of them come from that part of the world, actually, from northern Australia and New Guinea.
And we're Athyrinidae, quite a large family. Because although you're keeping these
Quite a few.
freshwater now, aren't you?
Yeah, these are all freshwater fish. There are a lot of species that are found in saltwater.
Yeah.
But,
Because I know I spawn... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They're not as colorful as these. Those are mainly silvery fish.
Yeah.
The saltwater
Food
Athyrinidae.
fish. I spawned the Telmatherina, the celebes, and,
Yeah.
and it took a little addition of salt to get them to kick off for me.
Yes,
So-
that often helps when
Yeah.
you breed this kind of fish.
So what do
Yeah.
we got here? We're looking at the old standby.
Well, the old standby is a red-tailed rainbow fish there.
Yeah.
There's one that we've been keeping even longer than that. That's the original Australian
What we
rainbow
call the-
fish 30 years ago.
When we
got
only
them.
knew that, we thought there was only one of them, huh?
Right, right.
Yeah, that's right.
But now we have many more species, and there are more and more coming in and
Really
discovered.
beautiful. Well, now you're working with this red one, I know, because I see babies out there.
That's right. I'm breeding all of these rainbow
Well, you've
fish.
spawned all of them.
But you saw the red rainbows there that have
Yeah.
just hatched. But I have the black line rainbow fish there, the yellow one,
Uh-huh.
the, well, of course, Talmadorina here, the one you just mentioned.
But that's that comes from
The
the
Celebes,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Celebes. And they're hardy fish, they're beautiful fish, and they fit into almost any community tank.
So you would recommend them for the beginner even?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, by all
Easy fish to put into your tank, and as Klaus said, very hardy. And this one in particular I like is, what a name, Splendida. It certainly says everything there is about these Australian rainbows, if you will. They are splendid fish. There's no question about it.